Hey, welcome to a new album today, and today I actually have Tool, which is a prog rock slash prog metal band that pretty much like whenever you hear people talk about like Dream Theater, for example, people usually also have the equivalent of Tool or Opeth. It's sort of like that's the three bands that people usually tend to talk about when it comes to prog metal. And the thing is, I knew Tool for a long time. I'd never heard their songs though. Like I knew, oh, okay, people respect them or whatever, because apparently their music is good or whatever. And I mean, yeah, I guess, I was like, okay, I'm gonna check them out and then see what's going on. So I decided to review Lateralus, and which, by the way, it's one of the longest albums I've actually reviewed here on the channel, because this thing is like almost hour and 20 long, I think. If I'm not mistaken, so it was quite the journey, I guess. Funnily enough, I guess this is like why people tend to perceive prog metal as songs that have like 10 minutes, because there's a lot of songs that have 10 minutes. Although to be fair, like you have a couple of songs that also only have like a minute or two, right? So I guess that it compensates, right? But yes, it's almost almost an entire movie in terms of music here, and it is your very typical prog. I shouldn't call it typical, because honestly, back when this came out, maybe it wasn't too typical, sure, but it is your like typical prog metal, except it's like it's nerdier, it's just nerdier. Clearly, when you compare these to bands like Dream Theater or Opeth, it's definitely less approachable from the perspective of they definitely don't care as much about like the melodies of the song as they care about like the grooviness of it. That's what I'll say about this album, and about the songs that I heard. They're very groovy, regardless if they are heavy or not, right? Which actually, that's something that I didn't like. It felt a lot that because obviously I listen to the entire album in a row. Like I don't listen to one song here and then tomorrow I listen to another. I listen to just first song all the way down, and then throughout a lot of the album, what I felt was the album doesn't really stand out when it comes to the songs it has. It just feels like sort of a entire like narrative in a way. So like it's hard for me, for example, to distinguish the first song from the last one, right, in terms of like the name of the song, but I kind of like understand and remember the vibe of the entire album, and like the high points, low points, in the sense of like, okay, you go into this like this heavy moment and then you sort of come down, and this moment is a bit groovier, this moment is like sort of more mysterious type thing, cautious, which is actually something that's really cool about this album as well, is the atmosphere. It establishes a really good atmosphere, like this sort of mysterious sort of foreigner atmosphere is really good, in a way. Like the unapproachability of the album really is one of its strengths, because it allows you to actually create a very distinct sound to it and a very distinct vibe to the entire experience that you are able to give people. Because I think that sometimes bands are so stuck in like following, I guess, the formula of certain music and whatnot, or like following certain specific patterns or whatever, that they end up just making everything like sound the same. And pretty much I never really heard anything like Tool before, you know what I mean? I've already talked about like when it came to other bands, like Dream Theater even, or Opeth, but more than those, Tool really is the epitome of, if you hear any Tool song, at least from this album, because I haven't heard the other one, so I wouldn't be able to like know, but if you hear any song from Tool from this album, like you instantly know it's Tool. Like it's that different from like the rest, you know what I mean? It's very unique in the way that they approached everything, like again, it's way, I guess, nerdier in the sense, because it definitely, a lot of the timings and a lot of the rhythm especially is a bit weirder, it's not as consistent as most other bands. In fact, I would say that this is like the first one outside of gent, which is like the only genre I think that doesn't really have a lot of consistent rhythm playing, right? Or rather that they play a lot with the rhythm. This is the other only band that I've heard playing so much with like the rhythm. It's very like weird rhythm wise, and it's always like changing and whatnot, and that's why it sounds so weird, right? But that's exactly why it sounds so distinct as well. They're able to create a very unique sound as a result of that. And even then, like the way that everything sounds just sounds very distinct. It sounds very like it's very unapproachable, but it's very interesting. You know, it sort of draws you in despite feeling very unapproachable. Weirdly enough, and yeah, I think that's. I was going to say something else, but I kind of forgot. But yes, basically that's kind of like Tool and their sound, I guess. Now, as I was mentioning, the album sort of does these, I don't, like, again, no song really stands out, but you can really, like, feel the entire album. And I really enjoyed a lot of the grooviness that the album has, as I was mentioning. This album is actually incredibly groovy. For every little, like, melody or, like, more catchiness that the band might forego, other bands have, they definitely more than make up for how groovy it sounds. Like, in a way, this is basically... what was reminding me of was this is kind of like if Gojira sort of made rock instead of metal and made it way nerdier than it actually needs to be, right? Because like in terms of the groovy sound, it sounded like very groovy, you know what I mean? There was definitely a lot of like sort of these again, it's just like grooviness to it. It's very hard to explain, but it's like unique, and yeah, it's very interesting, definitely. It's again, I would say it's a very uninviting album. I think that, especially for your average listener, they've never listened to metal. You put this in front of them, and they're like, "What the fuck is this?" Honestly, and definitely it is the type of album that I listened to this twice actually today before, or rather than just one time before making this. Usually, I only listen to albums once because I go on walks or whatever. I just like I'm chilling, doing something else, and listening to the album in the background or whatever. So usually it's like I listen to the album. Then later on in the day when I have time, it's when I record these things. But this one I actually listened to it twice before actually recording this, because it's definitely the type of album that you cannot just like listen to it once and it's done. It definitely makes name, like, if a lot of the especially 80s and 90s prog bands like Dream Theater, perfect example, if they're prog in the sense that they really push the envelope when it comes to what you could do with music, especially when it comes to metal music, I think that this is prog in the modern sense of just very weird time signatures and very like technical stuff, right? Especially when it comes to the skills people have when playing instruments and everything. Because I cannot imagine that, for example, the drumming of this is actually easy to play, because it's, again, completely fucked in terms of like time signature and everything, right? I think Tool embodies a lot, at least this album embodies a lot, that modern prog metal stereotype of, yeah, we're all sitting here being super smart about music, not actually caring if it sounds good or not. It's just like, oh yeah, we're really good at playing, and honestly, you need like 200 IQ to understand the music. I definitely feel that they are sort of on that side of prog metal more than they are on the side of trying to make something that sounds very unique. However, don't get me wrong, this is not necessarily a slant against them. That's just how they sound to me, and definitely I see where a lot of those prog bands got their inspiration from, not understanding that while Tool definitely does have more of that, I guess, intellectual prog metal composition in terms of the songs, I think that what really drew people to Tool wasn't just like the smart composition or whatever, is that it sounds interesting. Like, a lot of these songs sound incredibly interesting. This is an album that, and let me check if I can actually find that. Can I find when this was released? I think it was like 2003. When this album was released. Lateralus, actually, what the fuck? I should have done research on this, goddammit. This album came out in 2001, right? And it's like, you hear this album, and pretty much it sort of just sounds very modern, Like, as much as I'm like trying to, I guess, in a way, trash Tool because they sound like your average modern band, they were definitely like the inspiration for a lot of them, because this thing, you hear it today and it still sounds so interesting, right? Like, I was listening to it, and honestly, again, like, I usually do a little bit of like googling on the album to know like a little bit about the band or a little bit about the album when it was released or whatever, right, and whatnot. And especially to see like band members, because sometimes band members changing can impact the sound of something, even though I don't always pay attention to that, because to me it's not like super relevant, because I'm just talking about if I enjoy the music or not. I feel curious, and my curiosity peaks, and I research this, right? And this thing is like, it's not old. It's really not old. Like, you cannot convince anyone that this is over 20 years old. Like, it still sounds so unique, and it sounds so interesting. Like, if anything, if you were aware of a lot of these prog metal bands, these modern prog metal bands, and then you show this to someone and you say, hey, this band is coming and like revolutionizing prog metal, people will be like, yep, that's the best, like that's the next thing for prog metal, and yet they did it before everyone else. And then again, it's not just because of the compositions, because it just sounds really cool, it sounds really interesting, a lot of the songs really just grab you in. This is something that I praised a lot, Blackwater Park from Opeth, is that that album is able to create a very cool atmosphere for you to sort of imagine it, and sort of imagine yourself there, and sort of like create sort of this narrative in your head, right? And I think this album does kind of the same thing when it comes to just creating this sort of atmosphere, this it's more uninviting, sure, it's definitely a more uninviting atmosphere, and definitely seems way less friendly and way more hostile and everything, and even mechanical in nature. But that's the thing, it creates that atmosphere, and oftentimes when I'm listening to some prog metal stuff from newer bands, it's just like, oh cool, you know how to play an instrument, but why should I give a shit about your music? I'm not hearing your music because I want to hear how good you are at guitar, or drums, or whatever. I want to hear your music because I want you to like communicate with me something, right? Tell me something. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta engage me with your music. You gotta pass something to me, be it with the narrative or the atmosphere, or just like, basically, it's not just because you know how to play guitar that you have something to say, and creating music oftentimes is more about having something to say rather than just, oh yeah, I know how to play an instrument. Cool, that's a cool thing, but it isn't just like, it's not the only thing that's required, and I think that's really what a lot of these bands, and then especially what Tool did here, and again, I'm harping on this and I'm repeating this because I really do think that it's a very important point, because again, I think that a lot of people sort of just tend to think of prog metal as, oh yeah, they think they're really smart and that they know how to play their instruments, and a lot of it nowadays definitely is, because there's a reason as to why that stereotype exists. But with Tool, while they do have that, the reason as to why they're so big is not because they're just smart with their compositions, they draw you in, and this album does it really fucking well, right? I was interesting. I thought the entire sound, the entire thing was very uninviting, but I was very curious to hear more, to listen to the next song, to see where the album was going, right? Okay, now we're sort of in this spot, okay, the song is a bit more like just drumming, very, basic bass, right? Okay, we're sort of repeating lyrics, what's going on, and then sort of everything opens, and you know what I mean? It's like, it's uninviting, but you keep so much attention to the album because you're like, oh, well, what's going to happen, right? And I think that's a very good sign of a good album, because an album, for you to do that, for an album to do that, for an album to be that good, you don't need to make complex music or whatever. You just need to make it good. You need to make it engaging, right? Like, the ability of you to play a music or to play a song or to, play an instrument or whatever, it doesn't, in my opinion, impact how good you are at making music, right, and at composing music, and especially on how engaging you can make it. Yeah, so the Tool is really fucking good at doing that. And honestly, another thing that I appreciate is the entire, because this is something that I also appreciate. The album art also does paint like a really good picture. I always find it really funny that a lot of these prog metal bands, especially the ones that are really good at creating sort of these atmospheres, are also really good at having their album art sort of contribute to that, because that uninviting feeling, that sort of hostile feeling, is definitely felt in the album art, right? And I definitely felt it before, listening to the album, and I think it. I confirmed it when I was listening to the album, pretty much. So yeah, in terms of my vibe meter and what I'm thinking, honestly, right now I'm feeling a 9 out of 10. You know, like it's a pretty good album. Again, I listened to it twice before making this thing, which is not very common. I mean, to be fair, I also did it because it's definitely the type of album I feel that it's sort of gonna be like Blackwater Park, because with that album, it took me a lot of listens to. I mean, in fact, with that album, the first listen, I didn't even necessarily enjoy the album. I just thought, okay, whatever, just some death metal, who cares, right? But yeah, like I think that this album is sort of the same in the regard of, I think the more I listen to it, the more I'm gonna appreciate it, you know, the more I'm gonna find like cool, you know, little things here and there that sort of build this atmosphere and build sort of this environment that they've done a pretty good job at doing in this album. So yeah, that's pretty much for today, and I'll see you tomorrow with the new album review.